shield for Binghamton's tantrums. Winced. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. I'll find the garter belts. Binghamton slumped into his chair, clutching his stomach. What a war. Everything is on my shoulders. I'm the commanding officer, not a haberdasher. And now this. He brandished a crumpled message. Admiral Rafferty, Iron Pants Rafferty himself, is arriving today on a sneak inspection. Look at this place, Carpenter. It's a mess. The Petty Officers Club sinks are backed up. Tokyo Rose is probably making more sense than my communications officers. And I'm surrounded by idiots. Sir, Carpenter whispered, perhaps a pill for the indigestion? Indigestion? My stomach acid could start a car, Carpenter. It's not indigestion. It's McHale. It's always McHale and those 7 pirates on the PT-73. They're the real ulcer. Suddenly, a light bulb of pure, unadulterated cowardice flickered to life in Binghamton's eyes. Wait a minute. If I were sick, truly, terribly sick, I could appoint an acting base commander. Someone else would have to face the Admiral's wrath. Someone who would surely destroy themselves in the process. Carpenter's eyes widened. Not McHale, sir. Precisely. Binghamton cackled, which immediately turned into a groan of genuine pain. Appoint McHale as acting base commander, with him and his cutthroats in charge. They'll run wild. They'll turn the base into a Roman orgy right in front of Iron Pants. It's brilliant. Carpenter, call the medic. Tell them I'm dying. Tell them I've got tropical whatever it is. And so the trap was set. Binghamton retreated to the infirmary, feigning a mystery illness that baffled science but delighted his ego. Chapter 2. The Acting Base Commander. Commander Quentin McHale was a man who viewed Navy regulations as polite suggestions, usually written in a language he didn't speak. When he was summoned to Binghamton's bedside, he found a captain draped in a robe, looking about as near death as a man who had just finished a 3-course meal in secret. Oh, McHale, Binghamton moaned, his voice a frail reed. I'm in bad shape. The doctors, they don't know. I have to appoint an acting base commander. Someone with character. Someone like you. McHale narrowed his eyes. Captain, you must be kidding. I'm a saltwater skipper. I'd be no good behind a desk. I insist. Binghamton wheezed. And to help you, I'm appointing Ensign Parker as your acting executive officer. Beside McHale, Ensign Charles Parker, a man whose coordination was once compared to a newborn giraffe on ice, beamed. With pride. Oh boy, did you hear that, Skipper? Acting exec. You won't regret this, Captain. Binghamton suppressed a smile. I know I won't. Now out. Out. Go take command. Within an hour, the headquarters of Terratupa had undergone a radical transformation. McHale sat behind the big desk, his feet up, while the crew of the PT-73 treated the office like a clubhouse. Chief, McHale shouted into the phone. The sinks are plugged? What do you want a get-well card? Get a plunger. Skip, Gruber shouted, burst into the room. The boys found the garter belts, but we've also got to scramble. The PT-73 is hot on the tail of A. Nip sub. And Parker. McHale turned to his ensign, who was currently tangled in 3 different telephone cords. The Seabees are building an air raid shelter in the middle of the rifle range. Tell them to keep there. Heads down. It was glorious chaos. Moonshine was being distilled in the laundry. Hula girls, who had mysteriously appeared from a neighboring island, were rehearsing in the air raid shelter, and the supply list now included 3 cases of gin and a lawnmower. But the party was cut short by the roar of an airplane engine. Admiral Iron Pants Rafferty had arrived. Chapter 3. The Hula Girl Gambit. Admiral Rafferty was a man who believed that if a sailor wasn't standing at attention, he was probably dead when he stepped off the plane. He was met by McHale and a very starched and very nervous Ensign Parker. "Welcome to Teratupa, sir," McHale said, saluting with a practiced ease that hid the fact that his pockets were full of illegal poker chips. "At ease," Rafferty barked. "Where is Binghamton? I heard he was in the hospital." "Terrible illness, sir," McHale lied smoothly. "Hallucinations. He thinks he sees girls everywhere. It's the combat fatigue." Meanwhile, back at the infirmary, Binghamton was vibrating with excitement. He had heard the Admiral's plane. Now, Carpenter, now we strike. We go to the Admiral and show him the mess McHale has made. The hula, girls, the gambling. It's perfect. But McHale was 3 steps ahead. As Binghamton and Carpenter rushed toward the air raid shelter to expose the orgy, they found nothing but a group of CBs digging a very deep hole. The hula girls had been relocated to the laundry and then to the closet in Binghamton's own office. When Binghamton burst into his office with the Admiral screaming, "Look in the closet. Look at the disgrace," he opened the door to find a nurse in a bathing suit. "Lieutenant Wilson?" Binghamton blinked. "What are you doing in my closet?" "The captain sent me here to wait for a swim, sir," she said, following McHale's secret instructions to the letter. Admiral Rafferty turned to Binghamton, his face turning a shade of purple, usually reserved for tropical fruit. "Binghamton, you are in a seaman's uniform. You're screaming about hula girls in laundry shacks. And you're hiding nurses in your closet. McHale was right. You're delirious. Get back to bed." "But, Admiral," Binghamton wailed as he was dragged away by medics. "It was a trap. The alligator. The girls. Cap it finito." Chapter 4. The Sultan and the Princesses. A week later, Binghamton was back in power. Having convinced the medical board that his hallucinations were merely a reaction to a bad batch of quinine, he was determined to regain his dignity. And a visit from the Sultan of Marami was the perfect opportunity. The Sultan and his 3 daughters are arriving. Binghamton lectured McHale. "The Admiral wants us to go all out. I want this base 100% in order, and that means you and your riffraff are restricted to Aku Aku Island." "But, sir," McHale protested, "there's nothing on Aku Aku but sand and seagulls." "Exactly. Move." However, fate and a failing engine on the Sultan's plane intervened. The Sultan was forced to ditch near the 73 boat's position. McHale, ever the opportunist, rescued the Sultan and his daughters. "Wowie, wow, wow, wow," Gruber whispered as the 3 princesses stepped onto the boat. "Silence, you dog," the Sultan roared. "The next man who dares to debase the dignity of the princesses will answer to me." By the time they reached the main base, the Sultan was charmed by McHale. "A most efficient officer," he told a fuming Binghamton. "He even let me steer the boat." Binghamton, desperate to reclaim the spotlight, invited the Sultan to a grand dinner. But he made a fatal error. He restricted the crew again. To get back at him, the crew decided to play a ceremonial trick. When the dinner began, the princesses were missing. The crew, specifically Parker, Gruber, and Christie, had borrowed some of the princesses' veils and robes. They performed a traditional Morani dance that involved a lot of clumsy stumbling and a suspicious amount of hair on the princesses' legs. Binghamton, convinced he was witnessing an imposter, grabbed one of the dancers. "I've got you, you phony Balinese bunny." He ripped off the veil to reveal Ensign Parker in a wig. The Sultan rose, trembling with rage. "You have insulted my blood. I will raid your Washington. Stupid infidel." Binghamton stood frozen as the Sultan marched out. "Why me?" he whispered to the ceiling. "Why is it always me?" Chapter 5. The Jinx and the Ghost of PT-13. Binghamton's next plan involved psychological warfare. He discovered a dusty file claiming that the PT-73 was originally the PT-13, a Jinx boat that had lost 2 crews to mysterious explosions. "We'll scare them off the boat," Binghamton told Carpenter. "They're superstitious sailors. They'll beg for